What's up, YouTube? It's Ryan from AnnihilatorMTG here, and I'm back again with some more Modern. This week, we're going to be playing Blue-Red Taking Turns. I want to give a special shout out to Daniel Wong. For those of you who don't know, Daniel Wong is a brilliant Taking Turns player that is probably better known for being the quad sleeve guy. Hilarious as that is, I deeply respect his skills, especially with his deck. About a month ago, he put out a Taking Turns build that leverages Dreadhorde Arcanist with Ancestral Vision as an absurdly powerful value engine. This piqued my interest almost immediately. Being able to recast Ancestrals for free while also taking extra turns is kinda nuts. Do this with a Planeswalker on the board and you're almost guaranteed to win. There are a few changes that I wanted to make to this list. Our first big change is moving the Commandeers to the sideboard in favor of including the Royal Scions. Being able to draw and discard excess Ancestrals is an incredible asset, not to mention that because we're taking extra turns, using this Planeswalker's ultimate is both easy and very powerful. The other change that I'm a little less sure about is the inclusion of Desolate Lighthouse instead of Mikokoro. Having an additional way of dumping Ancestrals seems really good, and truth be told, I'm a little bit uncertain about allowing our opponents to draw extra cards in a format where Force of Negation exists. Outside of those changes and a few comfort picks in the sideboard, this list is almost entirely Daniel's. With that said, I'm really excited to play this deck, so let's hop into the first match and see how it performs. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friend, and this hand looks awesome. Seems our opponent kept 7 as well. They start off with a Windswept Heath and crack it immediately, finding themselves a Temple Garden, and we see an Arbor Elf. We draw a Sulfur Falls. Let's lead off with a Polluted Delta, find ourselves a Steam Vent, and then we're going to Bolt the Elf, and we'll pass. They draw for turn. They play a Utopia Sprawl, and then they pass. Wow. We draw Dreadhorde. Beautiful. Let's play an Island, and then we'll cast it. Then we pass. They draw for turn. They play a Windswept Heath. They must have drawn that. They crack it to find a Forest, and we see a Skyclave. They exile our Dreadhorde. We draw the Royal Scions, so let's play a land, and then I think we're just going to hold up Snap Bolt, and we'll pass. Our opponent draws and plays a basic Plains into a Mentor, and then we see an Auriok Champion. Brutal. No idea why they didn't play that first. They swing in with a Skyclave, so what we're going to do here is flash out the Snap. Let's cast the Lightning Bolt at their Mentor. It dies. They gain 2. Then they gain 1 from the champion. Let's block the Skyclave. We get an illusion, and they gain another life, and then they pass. We draw a Remand. Let's cast the Royal Scions. Then we're going to uptick. We find an Island. Think we're just going to discard the Island and then cast the Serum Visions. We see an Ancestral, a Dreadhorde, and another Island. Let's go bottom on the Dreadhorde, top on the Island, and then we're just going to pass. Our opponent draws for turn. They play a Ranger Captain. That's potentially dangerous. They gain some life and find a Walking Ballista. We draw the Island. Let's cast the Time Warp. Then we're going to uptick the Royal Scions. Let's discard the Ancestral. Then we pass. We draw a Serum Visions. Let's cast the Bolt on the Ranger Captain. They sack it in response. Then we're going to uptick the Royal Scions. We find an Island. Let's ditch the Serum Visions, play the Island, and then we'll pass. Alright, we're getting one step closer. They play a Horizon Canopy, and then they spend 4 mana on a Ballista. Let's respond with a Remand. We draw an Ancestral, and then they pass. We draw an Opt. Let's cast it. We find a Brazen Borrower. Think we can put that on the top, and then we're just going to ult the Royal Scions. Let's target them for the damage. So now we've got quite the situation. I think what we're going to do is play and crack the Flooded Strand, suspend an Ancestral, then I think we're just going to cast the Time Warp. We'll swing in for 2. That'll take him down to 13. Let's yield. We draw an Opt. Think we're just going to play it. We find another Time Warp. Beautiful. Let's cast it. We'll swing in for 2 again, this time taking them down to 11. We find another Opt. Think it's likely better to now cast the Temporal Mastery. We'll attack once again. We take them down to 9. We untap, take a counter off the Ancestral, and draw. We find a Lightning Bolt. Let's cast the Opt. We see a Jace. I kind of want to put that on the bottom. Then we find a Lighthouse. Let's cast the Dreadhorde. They gain 1 life. Then we're going to swing in for 2. We take them down to 8, and then I think we're just going to pass. They draw for turn. They cast a Heliod, and then a 1/1 Ballista. Let's respond to the Ballista and cast Petty Theft on the Heliod. They gain some life off the Ballista. Then we're going to flash out the Brazen Borrower, hopefully baiting them into sacking the Ballista. We untap. Then we get to cast the Visions. That's a somewhat underwhelming draw. Let's play a Sulfur Falls. Then we're going to swing in with a team. We have a Dreadhorde Dreadhorde trigger. Let's target the Ancestral, then we cast it, drawing even more lands. They block accordingly, then they sack the Ballista, targeting the Borrower. Then I think we're going to cast the Jace, return the champion. They draw for turn. Looks like they're replaying their champion, and we see a second one as well. They gain some life, and it looks like they're passing. Let's activate the Lighthouse during their end step. We're going to ditch the Visions. We untap, draw an Opt. Let's brainstorm off the Jace, and that looks like it might be game. Let's cast Lightning Bolt number 1, then we swing in, we'll target the bolt, then we cast it at them, and we'll try Lightning Bolt number 3. Looks like that's enough. Nice. So playing against Heliod, I don't think we really need to change all that much. I think what we're going to do is cut the Cryptic Commands and 1 copy of Ancestral for the Thing in the Ice. We could bring in the Aether Gusts, but honestly, a lot of their threats are mono-white, so I don't think it's really as good as one might think. Yeah, that should be fine. We'll submit. And this hand's awesome. We've got a turn 1 Ancestral and a turn 2 Petty Theft. Sure. Looks like our opponent went down to 6. They lead off with a Temple Garden, and they play an Arbor Elf. We draw another Sulfur Falls. Let's play an Island, and then we're going to suspend, and we pass. Our opponent draws for turn. They play a Prismatic Vista. They crack it for a basic Plains, and we see a Mentor. They swing in for 1 with the Elf, and they pass. We take a counter off the Ancestral, then we draw a second one. I think we're just going to play the Sulfur Falls, then pass. They draw for turn. Let's see what you got. They play a Horizon Canopy, and then crack it immediately. They swing in for 3, taking us down to 16. So I think we're just going to Petty Theft the Mentor. They pass, we take a counter off the Ancestral, and we find a Lightning Bolt. Beautiful. So let's bolt the Elf. Then we're going to put a Sulfur Falls into play and cast the Visions. We draw another Bolt and then find a Thing in the Ice plus Temporal. Beautiful. Let's go top, and then we're going to pass. Well, I don't mean to count my chickens, but I think this is going to be very hard for our opponent to beat. They replay the Mentor and then put a Temple Garden into play tapped. Let's cast the Bolt during their end step on their Mentor. They gain some life. Then we untap and take a counter off the Visions. Let's reveal the Mastery. Then we're going to cast it. We'll suspend the second Ancestral. Then we're going to play a Steam Vents tapped, and we pass. Let's yield to the triggers. We get to cast Ancestral number 1, and this is quite the hand. Then we draw Steam Vents. So let's play a Steam Vents untapped, then we're going to cast the Thing in the Ice, and I think we're just going to pass. Alright, we're looking good. They draw for turn. They play a Windswept Heath, and we see a Skyclave. They exile our Thing. Then I think we're just going to cast the Borrower during their end step. We untap and take a counter off the Visions. We draw an Island. Let's play the Opt. We find a Jace. Beautiful. Let's cast him. Then we're going to brainstorm. Let's put the Jace and the Mastery on top. We swing in for 3. We take him down to 16. Then they crack their Windswept Heath, find a Temple Garden, and then they draw for turn. We gotta remember to not cast the Opt. They swing in for 2 at us and not the Jace. That's different. They take us down to 12. Then they cast a second Skyclave targeting the Jace. They play a Windswept Heath. We take a counter off the Visions, then we reveal the Temporal Mastery. Let's cast it. Then we're going to play an untapped Steam Vents. Let's cast the Opt. We put the Jace on top, then we cast him. Let's brainstorm. We find a ton of lands. Well, this is going to be something. Let's swing in for 3 in the air. We take him down to 12. Then we untap, take a counter off the Ancestral. We'll cast it. We find a Time Warp and 2 lands. Beautiful. Plus a Dreadhorde. All right, we should be good to go. So let's put a land into play. Then we're going to brainstorm. We find even more turn cards. Let's put 2 lands on top. Then we're going to crack the Delta. Get an island. Let's cast the Dreadhorde. Then we're going to jam a Time Warp. And they scoop it up. GG's. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friend, and we won the die roll. It seems like our opponent's playing a Lurrus deck, so as long as they're not getting too aggressive, these Ancestrals should do a ton of work. Let's start things off with a basic island, and then we'll suspend Ancestral number 1, and then we'll pass. Our opponent draws for turn. They play a Mishra's Bauble. They crack it immediately, targeting themselves. Then they play a Polluted Delta. That gets cracked as well, finding an untapped Watery Grave, and we see a Delver. Whoa, nice. That's super cool. They draw off the Bauble, then we take a counter off the Ancestral, and we find a Lightning Bolt. So let's try to bolt the Delver. The Bolt resolves, then we're gonna suspend the second Ancestral. We pass, they draw for turn. They play a Blood Crypt untapped, and then we see a Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Let's yield to the triggers. We draw another one. Goodness. Let's suspend that as well. Play the Flooded Strand, and then we're going to pass. Our opponent draws for turn. They play a very fancy Serum Visions. Then we see an untapped Watery Grave. They cast a Thoughtseize. Oh boy. They take the Time Warp. Then they activate the Jace, ditching a swamp. They target the Thoughtseize with the Jace and recast it. Let's crack the Flooded Strand during their end step. We're going to find ourselves a tapped Steam Vents. We yield to the 3 triggers, and we draw another Steam Vents. All right, we'll play it tapped and then we'll pass. Luckily for us, if they've got any hand attack, it's just not going to do anything. Let's see what they've got. They play another Delver, and then we see a Shadow. They uptick their Jace, and it looks like they're passing. We yield to the triggers. 1 Ancestral comes off of Suspend. Let's cast it, targeting ourselves. They respond with a Stubborn Denial. Sure. We draw an Opt. Let's cast it. We see a Steam Vents on top. We're going to put that on the bottom, and then we see a Jace. We're going to pass in the meantime. They have a trigger. They do not flip their Delver. They cast a Mishra's Bauble. Then they Thought Scour themselves. They hit a Delver. You almost would think that they would have bobbled first, but why not? They uptick the Jace. Then they crack the Bauble targeting us. Looks like they're swinging in for 5. They Lightning Bolt themselves. That takes us down to 11. Then we untap, they draw off the Bauble, we take off some counters, then we cast the Ancestral. We see 2 lands, a Dreadhorde, and the Royal Scions. That's pretty good. Let's put the Lighthouse into play, and then we're going to cast the Jace. Let's return their Shadow, and then we're going to pass. They've got a trigger. They fail to flip. Looks like they're going to be flashing back the Lightning Bolt with the Jace. They target our Jace and recast the Shadow. They swing in for 1. That takes us down to 10. We have an Ancestral. Let's cast a Jace. We're going to bounce the Shadow. Then we'll play a Delta. Let's crack it. Find ourselves an island. Then we'll cast the Dreadhorde, and we'll pass. Looks like they fatal push the Dreadhorde. They've got a Delver trigger. They fail to flip once again. Beautiful. They play a tapped Blood Crypt. Then they swing in for 1 at the Jace. They take the Jace down to 1. They replay the Shadow, and then play another one. All right, let's see what we can do here. First things first, let's play an island. Then I think we're going to brainstorm. All right, I think we can make this work, most likely. Let's stack the cards accordingly. Then we're going to play a Mastery. Let's pass. We untap, draw another Mastery. We'll hit yes. We cast it. Then we're going to brainstorm. Let's stack the brainstorm accordingly. We're going to play a Flooded Strand and then fetch for an island. Let's cast a Borrower, and then another one, and we'll pass. We draw for turn. We find a Sulfur Falls. Let's move in for combat, and our opponent scoops it up. Grixis Shadow is definitely an interesting matchup. I think we can cut the Cryptics in favor of the Disputes. I also think that Thing in the Ice is pretty darn good. I think the Remands aren't nearly as good as we'd want them to be, and maybe we can trim on like 1 Ancestral. Sure, why not? We'll submit. So this hand has a lot of potential. It can balloon into something ridiculous, but we can also just be stuck on 1 land for a little while. I think it's probably worth risking. We already won the first game, so we should be fine. Looks like our opponent went down to 6. They lead with a Mishra's Bauble, targeting themselves. Then they play a Scalding Tarn. They crack it immediately, finding themselves a Watery Grave. And it looks like they're passing. They draw off the Bauble. We find a Steam Vents. That's excellent. We'll start things off with that, then suspend the Ancestral. They Thought Scour themselves. Then they untap and draw. They play and crack a Bloodstained Mire, finding themselves a Steam Vents. That comes in untapped. Then they cast a Thoughtseize. I assume they're either going to take one of the Dreadhordes or a Jace, and it seems like they're going after the Dreadhorde. Then we see a Serum Visions. I almost have to assume that they're just going to kill our Dreadhorde, but we pretty much have to play it. We find a Time Warp. Let's fetch with a Delta. We're going to grab an island. Then let's cast the Dreadhorde, and we'll pass. They untap and draw, casting a Thoughtseize, sure. This one's going to be a little bit awkward. They take the Jace and cast a Thought Scour. Well, this should be fun. We downtick the Ancestral. We find a Flooded Strand. So we're in a really weird position here. I kind of think I want to get crazy aggressive, so we're just going to Lightning Bolt them. That takes them down to 7. We'll swing in for 1, target the Bolt, cast it targeting them. That takes them down to 4. Then the attack takes them to 3, and we'll pass. All right, so 1 Lightning Bolt will do it. They play a Polluted Delta, crack it immediately, find themselves a swamp, then they cast a Snapcaster, targeting a Bolt. They hit our Dreadhorde. Let's respond by cracking the fetch, getting a Steam Vents. We'll put that in untapped. Then we'll cast the Opt. We see a Sulfur Falls, we'll put that on the bottom, and we have a Snap. All right, we can make this work. We untap, take a counter off the Ancestral, we find a Mystical Dispute, and we'll pass. They draw for turn, they play another Thought Scour, targeting themselves, hitting a Shadow, then we see a Delver, and then they cast Unearth, targeting a Shadow. Think we're just going to cast the Dispute, we'll hard pass, they swing in for 2, that takes us down to 12, we cast the Ancestral, we see a Temporal Mastery. Oh yeah, beautiful. Let's cast it. Then we draw for turn. Let's play the Opt. We see a Brazen Borrower. Let's put that on the bottom. Another turn card. Let's play the Sulfur Falls into the Visions. We draw an Island. Then we see Island plus Dispute. Let's go bottom, bottom. Then we pass. We untap and draw. Desolate Lighthouse. Let's cast the Time Warp. We'll ship it back. We untap and draw. Find the Royal Scions. Let's cast them. We uptick. Find a Jace, think we're going to bin him, and then we'll pass. All right, so far so good. They've got a Delver trigger. Let's see what happens. They flip it, showing Thoughtseize. They can't cast it. They do cast an Inquisition. Let's flash out the Snap. We're going to target the Opt. Then we'll let the Inquisition fizzle. So their hand is Thoughtseize and 1 unknown. They swing in for 3 at the Royal Scions. Then they play a Temur Battle Rage. So the Scions are going to die. During their end step, we're going to cast an Opt. We see a Dreadhorde. Sure, why not? We draw an Island. Let's cast the Dreadhorde. Then we're going to swing in for 2. Their hand is just a Thoughtseize, so there's really nothing to worry about. We trade snaps. Then we'll pass. They untap and draw. They play a Blood Crypt tapped. Beautiful. Then they put the Lurrus into hand. They choose not to attack. Let's activate the Lighthouse. And we found a Bolt. Beautiful. That should be that. Let's move in for combat. We swing in, target the Bolt, cast it targeting them, and they scoop it up. GG's. Okay, looks like we found our opponent here. Best of luck to you, my friend, and we won the die roll. I feel like this hand has a decent amount of potential, so we'll keep. Let's start things off with a basic island, then we'll suspend the Ancestral, and then we'll pass. Our opponent draws for turn. They start things off with an untapped Sacred Foundry, then they play a Monastery Swiftspear. They swing in for 1, that takes us down to 19, then they pass. We'll take a counter off the Ancestral, then we draw a Lightning Bolt, beautiful. Let's play an untapped Steam Vent, then we're going to cast the Bolt targeting their Swiftspear, and we'll pass. So far so good. Our opponent untaps and draws, then they play an Inspiring Vantage, and then another Swiftspear, sure, and make that 2, okay. They move in for attacks, take us down to 15, then they pass. We downtick the Ancestral, finding ourselves a Time Warp. Let's play and crack the Flooded Strand. We're going to grab an island, then we'll cast the Royal Scions. Let's uptick. Think we're going to get rid of the Temporal Mastery, then we're going to pass. They untap and draw, play a Sunbake Canyon, then we see a Goblin Guide. They cast a Lightning Bolt at our face, that takes us down to 11. Then they suspend a Rift Bolt, they swing in with a team, that takes us down to 5. We downtick the Ancestral, we find a Cryptic Command. Let's play and crack the Delta, gonna get an island, then we'll uptick the Scions. Let's ditch the Remand, and we'll pass. Their Rift Bolt comes off suspend. We're gonna play the Cryptic Command and choose counter tap. They cast a Skullcrack, that takes us down to 1, and they play an Arid Mesa, nice. The Ancestral comes off of suspend, we cast it, we draw 2 lands and a snap, then we see a Dreadhorde, let's play the island, then we're gonna uptick, let's ditch a fetch, then we'll play the Time Warp, we pass, then we untap and draw, we found another Time Warp, that's a miracle, let's uptick, we're gonna ditch the Flooded Strand, then we'll cast the Time Warp, we pass, take another turn, Temporal Mastery, oh my god, this might actually work. We cast it, then we'll play a Dreadhorde, let's ultimate the Royal Scions, we'll target them, that takes them down to 10, we'll cast an Opt, we see a Brazen Borrower, we'll put that on the bottom, Sulfur Falls, beautiful, then we're going to cast a Lightning Bolt at their face, that takes them down to 7, then we take an extra turn, we get a Borrower, let's uptick the Royal Scions, ditch the Ancestral, then we swing in, target the Ancestral, cast it targeting ourselves, that takes them down to 6, I think we're going to cast the Serum Visions, we find a Desolate Lighthouse, and then a Serum Visions plus a Mountain, let's go bottom bottom, we'll play the Lighthouse, and I think we just have to pass. They sack their Arid Mesa, finding a mountain. Oh, and I'm dumb as a sack of bricks, hold on. Let's flash out a Snapcaster, we're going to target a Lightning Bolt, then aim it at them, then we'll flash out the second one, and they scoop it up, nice. So to explain that, my mic stand was covering the second Lightning Bolt, so I only thought we had one of them, and then when I saw the Lightning Bolt at the top of the stack, I was like, wait a minute, we can actually win from here. That's pretty funny. Okay, so playing against Burn, we're going to make a couple of changes. First things first, we're going to cut the Cryptic Commands, as well as 1 copy of Time Time Warp and Temporal Mastery. Then we're going to bring in the Thing in the Ice plus the Aether Gusts and cut the Remands. We could also trim the Ancestrals for something like an Anger of the Gods, and in fact, that might actually be worth it. Yeah, that actually seems kind of nice. We'll submit. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't think we can keep a one-lander with no cantrips. We'll ship this back, and this hand is definitely slow, but it's a little bit better. Let's ship the Delta, and we'll pass. They start things off with a basic mountain, and suspend a Rift Bolt, nice. We draw a Lightning Bolt, beautiful. Let's play a basic island, then we're gonna pass. Their Rift Bolt comes off suspend. That takes us down to 17. Then they draw. We see another basic mountain. Then they play a Skewer the Critics. That takes us down to 14. And we see a Lightning Bolt taking us down to 11, sure. We untap and draw Serum Visions. Let's cast the Dreadhorde, then we're going to pass. They draw for turn. They play an Inspiring Vantage, then they cast an Eidolon, and they pass. We draw a Lightning Bolt. Let's cast it targeting their Eidolon. Then we'll swing in with the Dreadhorde, target the bolt, hit them with it. That takes them down to 17 and then 16, and we'll pass. They untap and draw. Our opponent plays a Goblin Guide, and then a Bloodstained Mire. They swing in for 2. Let's cast the Aether Gust. They're paying costs. They respond with a Skullcrack, sure. They put the Goblin Guide on the bottom of their library. We draw Flooded Strand, and then they pass. We draw a second one. Let's cast a Serum Visions. We find an Anger of the Gods, then we see Serum Visions plus Brazen Borrower. Let's put both of those on the bottom. Then we'll swing in with our Dreadhorde, target the Visions. Let's cast it. We draw an Ancestral, then we see the Royal Scions and an Island. Let's go top, bottom. That takes them down to 15. Then we pass. During their upkeep, they crack their Bloodstained Mire, finding themselves a tapped Sacred Foundry. Then they cast a Lava Spike. Then they pass. We draw the Royal Scions. Let's cast them. We uptick. Let's ditch the Ancestral. Then we'll swing in, target the Ancestral, cast it on ourselves. We draw a Time Warp, a copy of the Royal Scions, and a Steam Vents. Sure. We're going to play the second Flooded Strand. Then we're going to crack the first one getting an island, and then the second one getting another island. Now we can hold up the Aether Gust, so we basically can't lose, I don't think. They draw for turn. They play a land, and we're good to go. We draw Polluted Delta. Let's play a tap Steam Vents. Then we're going to uptick the Royal Scions. Let's ditch the land. We'll cast the Time Warp. Then we swing in. That takes them down to 12. Then we'll take an extra turn. Draw a Lightning Bolt. We'll uptick the Scions. Ditch the Bolt. Play an island. Cast a Bolt targeting them. That takes them down to 9. Then we'll swing in. Target one of the Lightning Bolts. Cast it at them. That takes them down to 6. Then 5. We'll jam the Time Warp. And that should be game. We untap and draw. Let's ult the Royal Scions. Target our opponent. And they take 9 damage for the win. GG. And there we have it. Taking Turns is an incredibly fun deck to play when it gets going. I do think that this list rewards experience a lot more than some of the other blue-red combo lists. For instance, it's rather trivial to win on the spot when playing through the Breach, but this deck requires a lot more care and consideration. I will say that the inclusion of the Royal Scions felt incredible in this list, and it really saved us in more than a few situations. Once again, I want to thank Daniel Wong for the inspiration for this video. He's a really cool dude, so be sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. If you like my content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This stuff really does help, so thank you, and as always, stay safe out there and have a good one.